opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Sunday, May the 10th, 2026. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, President of Children's Health Defense, and myself, Polly Tommy. And first of all, to all of you out there, all you mothers and carers, happy Mother's Day.
Absolutely. Happy Mother's Day, not only to the mothers, but to the kids that they mother, to the supporters for the moms, be they husbands, parents, aunts and uncles. Mothers are, at the heart of every family, Polly, and we're so grateful. Mothers really created this movement for children's health, and we do not forget you.
Yes. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. We've got to start with the Hantavirus, have we not? Because honestly, it's all over the press. Let's just read a couple of headlines. This is New York Post. Flight attendant hospitalized after coming in contact with Hantavirus cruise ship passenger who died. BBC are saying, so all is good. Scientists working to create hantavirus vaccines. And then Marjorie Green, the former congressman, shared a Jay Anderson X tweet that says, there are things you just can't make up, and this is one of them. When you realize the new fear virus has been pushed by the media, known as hantavirus, was also listed as an adverse side effect of the COVID vaccine. So these are just things that are out there right now. I'm sure many of you saw Carl on Friday morning breaking it down. But Mary, we will at Children's Health Defense, through the Defenders, through CHDTV, be bringing you up to date on what is going on there. But a lot of similarities, Mary, between the beginning of COVID and this.
Yeah, we need to follow this closely, and we will be, and we'll be keeping you informed. So interesting, Dr. Tedros, the director of the World Health Organization, came out and did a press conference on this. This was on a ship. You'll remember in COVID, there was a ship early on. The ship here was put in quarantine off the coast of Africa. I mean, three people allegedly have died from this, Polly. So this is very serious. They're saying it's from rodents. We just need to follow this. And it is, as you pointed out, BBC points out that there is work on a hantavirus vaccine. We can't say we're shocked by that one. So we're going to follow this closely. It's not clear what's really going on.
No, but it's a little fishy.
Yes, it is.
Michael Nevadakis in the Defender. Supreme Court rejects appeal in COVID misinformation case, but doctors say they still won. The US Supreme Court declined to hear a key medical free speech case involving Basketball Hall of Famer John Stockton and several doctors who alleged that the Washington Medical Commission's COVID-19 misinformation policies violated their First Amendment free speech rights. The decision came down after the commission dropped charges against the doctors.
So, Polly, we've supported two very important cases all the way to the Supreme Court about the freedom of doctors and other health practitioners to provide truthful information about COVID in particular, and the right of the public to hear that information. So the Supreme Court now has decided they're not going to take either of those cases. We're disappointed, but we're not shocked. They take very, very few cases, Polly. They take, less than 1 in 1,000 cases. So it's not a total shock. But the good news that came in part out of our fight is that the Washington Medical Commission dropped their case against Dr. Eggleston, who was speaking out. They had basically, for an editorial in a newspaper, tried to take away his license or discipline him. And then in the case with Pierre Corey, that case in the Eastern District of California is still alive. So basically what happened in California, you'll remember, everyone, is that we challenged a statute that said that doctors had to toe the line on COVID and tell people the orthodoxy that this was, a zoonotic leak and that they had to follow, remdesivir and all that kind of stuff. And that was thrown out by the courts in California as being an unlawful statute. And then they had it go through the standard of care through the medical board. And so this, we do believe that there's a possibility that the court, either that California Medical Board will drop this provision, as they basically just did in Washington, or that there will be a preliminary injunction. So that case is still going on. But, as much as, Polly, we love winning, the real win is that the truth comes out and that doctors can speak freely. And that is happening in part as a result of the work that we've done.
Exactly. Michael Nevadakis in The Defender here, virologist linked to Fauci under FBI investigation for smuggling dangerous pathogens into the US. Earlier this year, Vincent Munster, an NIH virologist, traveled to the Democratic Republic of Congo with NIH scientist Claude Yinder. When they returned to the US, they were stopped for an airport security check, which revealed pathogen samples collected from patients. The Disinformation Chronicle reports that the samples included monkeypox virus. My gosh, it just plot thickens every single time we do this.
Polly, you can't, this one's another one. You just can't make this up. You can't make this up. So this guy Munster, and that's like a name right out of, a television series about a family of monsters. But Vincent Munster runs the Rocky Mountain lab in Colorado that is doing gain-of-function research still. He co-authored an article in February of this year in The Lancet talking about the dangers of monkeypox and about how travel is dangerous, and that what happened during COVID will repeat itself unless there's further research on this. But the reality is, as Paul Thacker and the White Coast Waste Project are pointing out, is they have this incredibly laissez-faire safety culture where the scientist himself is illegally bringing in dangerous viruses. You can't make this up. And this guy Munster is thick into doing research on bat coronaviruses. He was on the proposal in 2018 that went to DARPA, that even DARPA refused as gain of function. This guy's taken money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's taken money from the Wellcome Trust Foundation. I applaud White Coast Waste Project. They have signs near this lab in Colorado calling out the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kennedy, of like, why is this lab still open? They have lots of infractions based on safety. So this is a really important article, largely based on the work of Paul Thacker at the Disinformation Chronicle, and really terrific article by Michael Nevadakis. Highly recommend it.
Okay, Branson Institute, the other Fauci aide who should be indicted, who is Greg Focus. Greg Focus was critical to the censorship operation at the heart of the COVID-19 response. As chief of staff at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, Focus oversaw operations for the agency's $6 billion budget and later sought to evade FOIA requests by conspiring with Dr. David Morantz and intentionally misspelling key phrases such as gain of function. Again, it's like, we're uncovering all the baddies all in one go, Mary.
Well, it's exciting. Things are finally, Polly, starting to move on the prosecution front. And we know that David Morantz was indicted. He's 78. He's facing potentially the rest of his life in prison. So there's a good hope that he might be willing to kind of tell the truth, spill the beans. And there were two unindicted co-conspirators in that indictment. Maybe Folkers is one of them. But what's remarkable, Polly, about this fellow Folkers is these are obvious misspellings intended not to be picked up in Freedom of Information Act requests. I don't think you can justify them with like, oh, I accidentally hit the $ key or the asterisk key. There's no way that you could make that allegation credibly. So it's obvious that he is trying to circumvent the law around Freedom of Information Act. It's obvious that he's working with Morantz and with Fauci and with others to try to subvert the narrative that this is from a lab leak towards this zoonotic spillover, which is not plausible. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen on this, Polly. Really, this is exciting in the sense, Polly, that these people have done things that are overtly illegal. And so there's a real reason for them to be indicted and potentially go to prison. And it gives them a huge incentive to tell prosecutors more. And that's what's really exciting because, of course, there's so much more to this story than has really come out yet.
Okay, well, this next one is an article, great article by Jill Erzan. COVID cleaning protocols left woman with permanent lung damage and no compensation. Now, we did cover this with Kelly Mars on CHD but as you know, we always get like a 10, 15-minute segment. So Jill's done a great job going in depth. And it's such an important story, Mary, because who knew that? I mean, I know a lot of our viewers are very good like this, but who really knew that Lysol and all those kind of things could damage someone to the degree this poor lady?
Permanently. It's outrageous. This poor woman, was forced to do these cleaning protocols, right, as a hairstylist with Lysol, like a household product, and her lungs are permanently damaged. She has something called respiratory airway dysfunction syndrome, and she got no money from workers' compensation when this is obviously a work-related injury. She didn't know, she's in South Carolina, that she had a right of appeal because they didn't tell her that. And so she's fighting with her husband to try to make sure that workers know that they can appeal if they get a rejection from workers' compensation. It's a tragic story, really. It's a very compelling interview with her and her husband.
And to the viewers out there, if you have any stories like this, anything at all that you think that the public need to be aware of, do come to us, either the Defender or CHDTV or both, and we'll cover it and get to the bottom of it, because that's how we learn, is from you.
Absolutely, Polly, 100%.
Okay, Jill Erzan, callous and careless, AAP pushes doctors to vaccinate hospitalized children. So a series of reports from American Academy of Pediatrics encourages doctors to offer vaccines during pediatric hospital stays and surgeries. Critics say the approach pressures vulnerable families and conflicts with long-standing guidance to defer vaccination during illness. A hospital stay may not be the best time to inject them with toxins, adjuvants, and antigens, says Children's Health Defense Senior Research Scientist Carl Jablowski. Well, never, in my mind, never is a good time to inject them with all those things, but shocking again, Mary.
I think he's being sarcastic. Polly, it's outrageous. When people are in the hospital, unfortunately, the medical profession generally sees that as an opportunity in the pharmaceutical industry to do all kinds of interventions. So it is standard practice when people are in the hospital for other reasons, say, oh, would you like your flu shot? Would you like your pneumonia shot? Would you like your shingles shot? But the fact that the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, is doing this to kids is so appalling. And it's part of the reason that, we have a lawsuit against them for racketeering. They are allied with pharma and with the medical profession to make money. They are not out there to help kids with their health. The idea that when a kid comes into the hospital, let's say for a surgery, they can't eat, they can't move, they have to be, bed rest, but, let's give them 5 shots. It boggles the mind, Polly, just boggles the mind.
Brenda Belletti here. Can vaccines cause autism? Existing studies are not designed to answer that question. Existing epidemiological studies on how often diseases occur in different groups of people and why are designed to examine whether vaccines cause neurodevelopment injuries in the general childhood population. But these studies can't capture the effects of vaccines on subgroups like children with mitochondrial dysfunction who may be more vulnerable to injuries from vaccines. This is according to a preprint by Children's Health Defense scientists and their colleagues.
Well, this is another study that we've done, a meta-analysis about autism and autism causation. And with 1 in 31 8-year-olds diagnosed with autism, that's a 3.2% of 8-year-olds. That's a lot of people. And they're calling this an epistemic crisis. There's such a lack of knowledge, Polly. They don't ever study the people who have autism to look at what the issues are. But our group found that 30 to 80% of people with autism have at least subclinical mitochondrial abnormalities. In my mind, Polly, the big question there is, did they have mitochondrial vulnerability at the beginning, or did these vaccines just damage their mitochondria? My guess is it's the latter. But basically, we do know that autism is really related to mitochondrial dysfunction. The energy source of the cell is compromised, and you don't have the same kind of energy that a typical cell or a normal cell would have. So, kudos to our science team for really working on this and looking at this issue of the science around autism, because we have got to get a better handle on what is autism. You and I both know that the psychiatric diagnosis they have is essentially garbage.
Right. We've heard this before, but I can't believe in this day and age we're still dealing with this. So listen to this. A school with 50 locations use electric shock devices on autistic children. The FDA wants to ban the devices. The US FDA has renewed its push to ban controversial electric shock devices used to control self-harm and aggressive behavior in people with development disabilities, including autism and Down syndrome. If finalized, the ban would effectively end the practice in the US, where it is now limited to one school in Massachusetts, though the school operates in 50 locations. It breaks my heart to think that anyone with electric shock, someone with autism, we both know, Mary, that, well, when Billy was young and he banged his head and all those ghastly things he did, he was in pain.
Absolutely.
So electric shock, a child or an adult who's in pain and can't verbalize what's going on, it's one of the most barbaric, cruel things.
It's barbaric. And what's even more shocking to me about this article, and shocking is sort of an odd word, but so the good news here is that the Food and Drug Administration has proposed a ban nationally on this. But in 2023, the Massachusetts Supreme Court upheld the use of this quote unquote shock therapy. It just boggles the mind, Polly. As you point out, it's like these people, as we'll talk about further, they're trapped from communication. Like, to be able to say my gut is like on fire or my brain is on fire, like give me some kind of treatment. And instead what we do is cause them more pain to distract them from the underlying pain. It's barbaric, as you said.
Michael Nevadakis here. Profound autism. Will new definition lead to better care and research? A federal advisory committee recommended adopting the term profound autism to refer to a subset of people with autism who require the greatest degree of support in their day-to-day lives, but whose cognitive abilities are not limited. Not all non-speaking people with high support needs have an intellectual disability. Many have severe motor disabilities, said John Gilmore, and he's one of the committee members.
So, Polly, I'm excited about this Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee with John Gilmore and Dr. Sylvia Fogel and Dr. Liz Mumper and many of the people that you and I have been working with for years, because these people really understand what autism is and what it's not. It is not a psychiatric condition as it is currently categorized. It is a whole body issue with a brain-body disconnect. And most of these people have severe, what's called apraxia. When they have a thought to move their right hand or to move their mouth to speak, it doesn't work. It'll say bubbles, 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 or they'll flap their hand. They don't have brain-body control. And I think that this IAC committee is now going to really help create this path with non-speakers, people with so-called autism on the committee, two of them, Elizabeth Bonker and Caden Larson. And it has people who really are knowledgeable, having treated thousands of kids with autism. So as much as I am so upset about the lack of progress for 25 years, 30 years, with money going down essentially a rat hole for genetic research, I am encouraged that under Secretary Kennedy, he has brought together this group of true advocates for people with autism to really explore what is it, get real treatment, and talk about the realities of autism.
Yeah, I'm going to go on to an article about spellers now, but just to say, we're really excited at CHDTV. Cade Larson's going to be coming on next week. It won't be a 20-minute segment. We're going to give him longer. And he's going to talk to us about profound autism, the spelling technique that he has, and how it's literally saved his life.
That's fantastic, Polly. I'm thrilled to hear that.
Okay, so Michael Nevadakis, New York Times attacks spelling parents, says it changed everything for their non-speaking children with autism. Families of non-speaking people with autism are pushing back at the New York Times after the newspaper published an op-ed claiming that spelling, a method through which non-speakers communicate using a letterboard, is debunked and unsupported by scientific evidence. Mary, my question, which is going to be for Cade, is Why? Why are they attacking it? It's clearly not debunked. What's behind that?
Well, okay. Well, let's start to unpack this, Polly. The word debunked, whenever you hear the word debunked, you know you're reading a propaganda piece, right? This is a propaganda word, and this is a propaganda piece. And as J.B. Handley says here, is quoted in this article, the author of this piece, Amy Lutz, who is a professor of the history of medicine at University of Pennsylvania, one of the biggest promoters of vaccines ever. Paul Offit used to be there. They are trying to say nothing to see here. Autism, these people can't talk. They have intellectual disability. We've got this under control. Don't have false hopes. It's outrageous. And what this article is really intended to do, as J.B. Handley points out, is this woman, Amy Lutz, is the person who has been trying to push back an amendment of trying to push back in New York State a bill that passed the House, the Assembly in New York unanimously. It's now in the Senate, that would allow people with a speech disability to choose their own method to be able to communicate. And Helen Keller's descendants are supporting this. Amy Lutz is the mastermind to try to kill that bill, a successful bill. The head of the Disability Committee put an amendment on it that basically completely undermines the purpose. This is the medical industrial complex, together with the Speech and Language Association, together with pharma, trying to support the narrative that facilitative communication is the same thing as spelling, is the same thing that is really giving false speech from non-speakers. It's outrageous, Polly. This is a piece of propaganda that is absolutely squarely against people with autism and against people who are non-speakers and unreliable speakers. And it's offensive. It's really offensive.
That's right. Right word is totally offensive. Okay, Jill Erzin here. Pediatrician shares 12 back to basic steps for keeping healthy. This is Dr. Paul Thomas and Michelle Perrault. They're both pediatricians. They're outlining practical, low-cost steps family can take to reduce children's daily exposure to toxins in food, air, and water. The new book, Making Our Children Well, a parent's guidebook, focuses on gradual changes parents can make to support their children's well-being. A lot of them don't cost anything, she told Dr. Paul Thomas. Now, we did have that show on, but again, it's another great article that might be easier to send to people, young parents and things like that. So great job.
It looks like it's a great book, right? This is an interview based on Dr. Michelle Perrault's new book, and she's super. We've had her on many times. She's so practical. I love some of her ideas, Polly, like keep spider plants in your house or peace plants. It cleans the air, ferns. Turn off your Wi-Fi router at night. You can give your kids Epsom salt baths, baking soda detox baths. All this stuff is like essentially free and easy, and it makes a difference. We know that we're talking in this chronic disease epidemic in kids, we're talking about total load. And so if you can reduce the total load, you are definitely improving health.
Yes, a little tip from me for buying Epsom salts, do not buy Epsom salts with flavour in it. Okay, it sends the children nuts. Buy the cheap Epsom salts in the plain bags that are not
Yep,
marketed.
absolutely. Yeah, not the lavender nonsense. Yeah.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. urges public to report hospitals serving food that doesn't meet dietary guidelines. So HHS sent notices to hospitals asking them to align their food purchases with the Trump administration 2025 to 30 dietary guidelines to ensure continued eligibility for Medicaid and Medicare payments. We are going to bring all the hospitals in the country in line with good food, said US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Thank you. That is great news.
It is great news. This Kaiser Family Foundation is not really generally a friend to Kennedy or to Maha. So it's an interesting article where they're basically saying he's using the power of his speech. He's using the power of the office to induce hospitals to change. They're saying he doesn't really have enforcement power right now. But this would be fantastic. I mean, I guess, Polly, there are hospitals out there that serve soda, that serve Coca-Cola to people in the hospital. And they're giving Jell-O with artificial dyes in it. And it's just crazy. So he's saying, give people real food. It's good news. It's definitely good news.
When Dr. Suzanne Humphreys and Pierre Corey were looking through the medical records of Daisy, they were horrified by the food that was being served to her when she was so sick. So yes, this is definitely going on. And I'm so pleased that he's addressing it.
Yeah.
This is the New York Times reporting here. Kennedy starts a push to help Americans quit antidepressants. So Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced several initiatives intended to rein in the prescription of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the most widely prescribed class of antidepressants, which are things like Zoloft, Lexapro, Paxil, and Prozac, all of those. And we saw it with a documentary which is on CHD TV in the movie section, Who Killed Alex Bordalakis? He was on all of that.
I think that's a really incredible film. I love that film that Andy Wakefield did. And you worked on, Polly. This article points out, Polly, 1 in 6 adults is on an SSRI, 16.6% of the adult population. That's just incredible. And they explain that part of the reason that there was this huge uptake is that they actually had fewer side effects than what had preceded them. But the main reason is that they could be prescribed by general practitioners. And as we know from some of the people who've gotten on these, it's very hard to get off of them. And the general practitioners don't even really know what they're doing. And so some people have had wildly horrific side effects going into psychosis. And so there's a huge crisis. Our colleagues at the Maha Institute had a conference very recently about psych drugs. And we have to help people have ways to get off of these drugs because they're very serious and debilitating in many, many ways.
Brenda Belletti, AI data centers spreading like an aggressive cancer. Journalist Maria Z reports that a surge in data center construction across the US is drawing renewed scrutiny over environmental and social costs on communities. Report higher electricity bills, health concerns, and quality of life disruptions. Proposed projects, including a 6,000-acre campus in Texas and a 42,000-acre development in Utah, are fueling calls for stricter regulations, greater transparency, and meaningful community input. Catherine Austin-Fitz covering this almost every week because she feels like this is one of our biggest threats right now. But it's draining our wells and it's draining our electricity, and we have to stop these things, apart from all the other ghastly things that these data centers are doing.
Right. Well, this is basically the surveillance world. This is creating a kind of centralized, digital brain that knows everything about what we're doing all the time. It's very dangerous. And the Texas project that you mentioned, 6,000 acres, that would use over half of all of the residential use of electricity. This stuff is just gargantuan needs for electricity and really will create a kind of control grid, a kind of a digital prison for us. So we have to be on top of this. And I'm really grateful that Catherine's covering this for us.
Yeah, me too. Also, people reporting, as Catherine was saying on her show, the noise of these data centers are really troubling to be living.
And the light and the noise. Yeah.
Okay, well, Duty to Disobey, the Children's Health Defense new film that is going to be a theatrical release on the 30th of July and an online release. Dates to be coming soon on that. So the new film, remember, exposes the fallout from military COVID vaccine mandates, amongst many other things. There's a lovely article here that's been written by Jill Erzan, and Mary has a quote in it. What happens in the military becomes a blueprint for what eventually happens in the public. That's Mary Holland's quote there. And just to go on before we talk about that, this latest from the film crew on the theatre release. May the 15th is our tipping date, so you need to buy your tickets now or the theatre will not tip, the film will not go ahead. And the 10 states that need help out of all of the states is New York, California, Colorado, New Jersey, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, Washington, Florida, and Maryland. So you can get your tickets now. You can also pre-order DVDs at dutytodisobey.com. But it's a great film, and we're already sending out the film to people to see, and we've had nothing but, yesterday someone told me they were in tears at the end of it. They had no idea that this went on in the military. So yes, it's a good film, and you do all need to see it. So please do buy your tickets.
Yeah. You have to buy your tickets this week, Polly, right? So today's the 10th, so it's by the 15th. And we really would, even if you aren't sure you're going to be able to go and you don't even know who you're going to go with, buy a few seats at your local theater so that you can make sure that it's going to be available to you and others who care about it. It is an amazing film. As one of the former military people say, it's really about the soul of the nation. It's at stake. What happened in the military was horrific. It was absolutely absolutely illegal. 8,000 people were discharged, but 95,000 people left, Polly. 95,000. So over 100,000 people basically were forced out of the military because the military was doing something illegal. They were forcing experimental shots on their people in violation of law. And you know, people in the military, fortunately, are taught if there's an unconstitutional or illegal order, you must disobey. And many did, and there still has not been real accountability in the military. So it's a really important film, and I'm proud that we've supported it, Polly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last article here is on fluoride. Brenda Belletti, fluoride study claiming no effect on IQ has basically no connection to reality. Mainstream media are widely promoting a study claiming that community water fluoridation has no effect on IQ, but critics told the Defender the study contains fundamental errors that invalidate the author's conclusions.
Polly, this one is so outrageous. Thank goodness for Brenda Belletti and Michael Connett, who the lead lawyer in the case that won to get fluoride out of the water. This study that was done by the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences is so deceptive. It just boggles my mind. So the people that they look at in this Wisconsin longitudinal study, they were born in 1939. They were born before they were 6 years old when they started putting fluoride in the water. So it is impossible for this group that they're studying to show any effects of fluoride because there was no fluoride in the water from 1939 to 1945. It is, and then there's another thing that they do that's just absolutely crazy, outrageous. It's a nonsense study. And then when Brenda Belletti, our phenomenal reporter, tried to go to the call to be on it when they were discussing the results, they wouldn't let her on the call. So this is just smoke and mirrors. At best, this is smoke and mirrors. At worst, this is truly scientific fraud, Polly. It's just... you just see what money does, right? I mean, this isn't a new story, but money really corrupts people, and it really corrupted these scientists who wrote this paper, which is just a nonsense paper at best.
Well, before we leave, we want to tell you about our $1 million match. We're in May now, and this is how Children's Health Events survived. So, Mary, tell us a bit about it.
Well, just twice a year, Polly, we really ask people to make a special effort to contribute. We love it if you are a regular contributor once a month. You could come to our monthly up close things. We really love it when people are steady donors because it gives us sort of a reliable stream of income. But we can't do what we do without your support. We can only do what we do with CHD TV, with the Defender 5 days a week and the best of, doing the science that we just reported on, doing the litigation that we're talking about, doing the films like Duty to Disobey. We can only do it with your help. And we're so grateful for the help we have. And we're so grateful to be able to do this work because, Polly, you and I have been doing this work as volunteers for, 20 odd years. But to be able to do it every day and to be able to have a job where we can wake up and think about this and make connections and do the next step, it's such a privilege. But we can only do it with your support. We really can't do it at the level that we do this work. We cannot do this without financial support. So please give if you can. Please become a member and make monthly donations if you can. If you can give $10 a month or $120 for the year, that gets you to our premium content, which is to attend the Up Close. It gets you to be able to use the community forum, which is an amazing platform where you meet other people who are within the CHD community. So thank you for your support.
Yes, and the Up Closes are so much fun. I just did one, stood in for Mary doing one. I had so much fun. And I've got another one coming up, a military one on the Duty to Disobey. And so do join us on those as well. So once you're signed up to it all, you'll get alerted to what we're doing. And Mary hosts most of them, but they're really fun.
Yeah, they are. It's once a month and it's something special. And you get to sort of be with other people in the community. You get to ask questions and it's behind the scenes, if you will.
Yeah, it's fun. All right, everyone. Well, thank you. Yes, Mary's right. Thank you for your support. I regard us as all one big family. When we have a win, it's a collective win of all the people on the front line fighting for the future. So everybody pray big, stand firm, never settle. I'll see you on CHD TV tomorrow, and Mary and I will be on together next week.
Thanks, Polly. Thanks, everybody.
Now, Ariana, have you ever been threatened?
You know, I haven't, but in the process of making this film, I did have a lot of people pull out. So when I would interview certain scientists on multiple accounts, they would email me and they were getting threats. So as soon as they would talk to me, as soon as we would have our interviews, I had a couple of researchers say, I'm so sorry, but we need to pull this, get rid of, like, delete my footage, do not mention my name. I'm feeling one of them was getting threats. Weird stuff started happening to their computer. And sometimes people will think, well, this is just paranoia. But, you know, as you know, and anyone who's following any of these topics, these are serious matters. And there are very real situations. Another guy told me that he was actually getting hit with frequency weapons as soon as him and I began talking. And so, you know, we know that this weaponry exists. We know that this is very real, very serious. And so, of course, you know, I did what I needed to do to protect the voice of these scientists. And so we had to pull them. Yeah, fortunately, though, I have not.
And so this has been like 4, maybe even 5 years in the making.
Yes.
Dedicated your life to that. All right. So this is a big question that I get a lot, is who's behind this? Who is they?
Right.
They are spraying the skies. Who are these evil people or corporations?
Right. The infamous they, the question everyone has. And this is where, Polly, spending 5 years in this topic, the they behind this is probably one of my most challenging questions to answer, because there are so many layers to the geoengineering topic. On one hand, you have what's being publicly displayed. You have Bill Gates is funding a lot of the projects. You have David Keith of Harvard University. He recently sold his company, so I don't know if he's actively behind solar radiation management anymore. You have the programs in the UK. I mean, there's all sorts of companies across this world, in Mexico, in the UK, in different countries, that are promoting these technologies simply as a means of fighting climate change. So are all these people evil? I don't know. I don't think so. I think some of them genuinely are good-hearted citizens who believe they are doing the right thing to stop climate change. However, now you then get into what are the more insidious, kind of hidden, covert programs that we aren't allowed to talk about. On one hand, I think all of the companies and programs that are in the public eye kind of promoting this technology as a means of fighting climate change is creating an active diversion for most people to look at, right? We're looking at these programs over here. Oh, look, this is just a technology to help save the earth. And it's hiding the fact that there's actually very insidious covert programs already taking place, already possibly, in my opinion, contributing to many of the catastrophic weather events that we are seeing and calling climate change itself. So in that case, I believe the UN is behind some of this. So we know from declassified government documents that the military-industrial complex is indeed behind many of these programs, and they have been since the 1960s. Operation Popeye, that took place in Vietnam and was intensifying the monsoon season that was flooding out the Vietnamese. We have so many decades of records of not just geoengineering, but weather modification.
The devil's in the details, right? The stratospheric aerosol transport and nucleation, Satan.
That's actually what they call it.
Right. That's the acronym, Satan.
That's written in MIT.
They aren't even hiding it anymore.
They have denied things over the years. Oh, we don't have that science or that thing. And then 5 years later or 3 years later, dang, they're putting it in a press release that they really do have it.
The White House released a congressionally mandated report, and they're focusing on reducing or eliminating natural sunlight from reaching the Earth.
Geoengineering carries with it a tremendous range of uncertainties, ethical and political concerns, and the potential for catastrophic environmental side effects.
Reporting on this, like you guys are doing, it puts you in the crosshairs.
If you speak out about anything that is against the narrative,
you're in line to get your head cut off the guillotine.
Scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. This is nuts. There's different nanoparticles everywhere, not only in the food, but in the water. It hides in the tissues. It builds up inside the nervous system.
This is a conspiracy theory. It's not something that sort of normal, rational people think is happening.
It's not a theory. Would you care to look at my data?
There has been testimony in front of the United Nations. There's also been testimony in front of the U.S. Congress, and I'm talking 15 and 20 years ago.
They know where it's coming from. I mean, he's a biologist. But this stuff, it does not belong free form in the atmosphere. It's nano material. That's man-made.
Whatever's up there is going to come down on us, right? It's going to land on our water, going to land on our food. If we're going to say our food is organic, what about our sky?
Did the colonizer ask for permission to take our land? What makes anybody think that geoengineering is going to be a different story? This time, they are colonizing the sky.
Brittany Burden.
And what age did this injury happen to you?
I was 36.
Okay, tell us what happened.
So I had, my family lived in Guatemala, and I had moved back to care for my mother, who was in renal failure. And I was getting a job, and I was told that for the job I was required to have this vaccination. I'm sorry, I have a timeline that I wrote down so that I don't ramble. So it was in 2020, and this was during all the COVID stuff. So they basically rushed everyone through orientation. Instead of hiring people and you going through all of this is the legalities, this is, the proper, ranks you have to go through, this is the paperwork you fill out. They didn't tell me any of those things. They just basically told me to sign all these papers. Here, go through employee health. You have to get these vaccinations because it was for a nonprofit that was within a hospital. I'm a hairstylist. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. But because the job was within a hospital, I was told that I had to have the vaccinations, and I wasn't given any opt-out or any official avenue to do that.
What vaccine were they telling you to get? Tdap and?
They said that the Tdap and the flu shot were both required. However, this was in August, so the flu shot wasn't even out for that year yet. So at the time, it was only the Tdap. And I'd had previous vaccinations when I was a child, never had a reaction, never had anything. They had me sign a paper showing that in the paper it said, had you had any kind of reaction within 6 weeks from any prior vaccinations? And I said no. But I asked them, I said, now I have had allergy issues. I showed them pictures. This was 2020. So in 2013, 7 years prior, I had had an outbreak of full body hives. Unexplained. An allergist basically told me I'm slightly allergic to everything, which I didn't necessarily believe. But I had to take Zyrtec twice a day. I told them all of this, and these are nurses within a hospital for the employee health sector. So I told them that I had had these reactions, and I was unsure if I would have any future reactions to anything else, but I had changed my diet and things had been better for 7 years. So they said, oh, you should be fine. They kind of encouraged me to go to my own personal doctor, but I didn't have one because we had just moved back from Guatemala. So they went ahead and gave me the injection. And within 7 hours, I had numbness and tingling in the arm that I was given the injection. And this is what I'm just going to kind of read the timeline so I don't ramble. But it was a lot. 1:20 p.m., the Boostrix vaccination was given. At 8:15 p.m. that night, I had numbness, tingling, and muscle weakness in the arm where it was given. By 10:30 that night, my heart rate was 132 beats a minute or more. And I tried to take a shower to calm down. I lay down in the bed, and it felt like my chest was collapsing, so I couldn't breathe. My dad had to take me to the emergency room. They monitored me. They did all of their normal gamut of testing. Even though I said this is a reaction to a Tdap vaccine I just had today, they didn't do any testing for that. And they said, by all accounts, we know that you don't have any of these issues that we normally test for in the ER, so it could be the vaccine, but we can't say that it is definitively. And they're like, I can give you Benadryl. That was pretty much it. And they discharged me. The next day, my oxygen rate at night when I would go to bed started dropping into the 80s, and it stayed there for a while. By September 4th, so 3 days technically later, I was having a sensation that my throat was closing, so I had to start drinking only organic shakes. I couldn't eat any bread or any solid food. I woke up on the 4th at 2:45 a.m. having uncontrollable shaking for my whole body, and I had a follow-up visit at the workplace doctor. So the day after the vaccine, the employee health sent me to workplace to get a workup to see what was going on. So the doctor that saw me did a full IgE markup, or like basically testing for allergens. He said he was testing me for a casein and a latex allergy. He asked if I was allergic to thimerosal. I thought that was weird because I knew that was mercury, and I'm like, isn't everyone technically not going to respond to that well? But that's what had me thinking, oh, he really thinks this could be a vaccine injury. And so I started trying to push that. So on the 4th, I went back to workplace, and they would not let me see the same doctor who had done the workup. I don't know if they were mad at him for doing those labs on me. But I saw a different doctor. He was gaslighting me, and he told me I needed to go get a COVID test because all of my testing was fine, and that the Tdap vaccine had no thimerosal in it. I Googled it while I was sitting in their office, and I told them it has aluminum in it, and since both of those are metal, I wanted an aluminum test, and he refused until I got a COVID test. So I went that afternoon to an American Family Care where my friend's mother is a nurse practitioner. I saw her by request because she knows me and she knows my body, and she knew that something wasn't right because I was having the full-on tremors. It looked like I had Parkinson's disease. And she gave me my negative COVID test results and sent me to a neurologist, or gave me a referral to go see a neurologist. The next day I went to an ER because my tremors were worsening and I was basically having to walk holding on to a wall. And at the ER, the doctor gaslit me and told me that he thought it was stress. Smiled at me and looked at me and told me I think it's stress, which it's technically a stress response. He's not lying, but he also wasn't looking for the truth. So I said, well, I have a referral for neurology. So he called an ambulance because there wasn't a neurologist at that particular ER or hospital, and they transferred me to UAB Maine, downtown Birmingham. It's supposed to be a top research hospital. I'm thinking, great, I'll get good results. I was in the ER waiting room for 14 hours, and finally that evening they did an MRI. They found a bulge between my C3 and C4 vertebrae, and I've not had any kind of injury or accident, nothing to cause that other than inflammation, obviously from the vaccine. But they said that it did not look like I had any signs of transverse myelitis or Guillain-Barré, so they discharged me. Numbness continued spreading through the core of my body. It felt like I couldn't breathe. I later learned that the C3 and C4 vertebrae is where your nerve that controls your diaphragm is located, so that's why I was having the breathing issues, but doctors still didn't do anything. Finally, by September 8th, I was using a walker to go everywhere. My employer never would come out to look me face to face. While I was on the walker, they actually called 2 police officers to escort me out of the HR department when I was trying to speak to somebody. I don't know, but I laughed at the police and I said, isn't it a little asinine that they had 2 security guards come escort someone out on a walker? But I felt like it was probably because they could legally say to their lawyer they never saw me in that condition, so they never wanted to put their eyes on me. But security cameras did. I'm sure they deleted that. So on September 9th, 1:37 a.m., I realized I was having paralysis issues. And so I had my dad take me to the ER for the 3rd time. I had waited in the ER all that night. Every other patient was seen before me because every time I went in, I said, this is a reaction to a vaccine I received. They never wanted to take that seriously. Finally, at 7:45 that morning, I was taken to a bed in the ER, and they probably had about 7 doctors surround me, and they're like, there's nothing we can do for you here in the ER. I said, I want an aluminum test. And they said, we don't do that in the ER. I said, then admit me. And they were basically trying to ask why. And thankfully I had read enough by that point. I had virtually memorized what I had read on a report from a veterinarian. And he said in his report that aluminum, after it breaks down the dead virus that it's attached to, it binds to transferrin proteins in your blood. And then it can cross the blood-brain barrier and it can cause these issues. So he was referring to animals that he had seen it in. But I told them I felt like that was a very real possibility for what was happening neurologically with me, and I wanted to be tested. They admitted me, and I was in the hospital for 2 days. I woke up with paralysis from the neck down the first morning in the hospital, and the paralysis lasted for 3 hours. They had physical therapy come in and try to work with me on my gait and my walk. And I was supported with a walker, but I couldn't move. My feet were like duck toes. My toes were pointed out, and I thought that they were straight on. I thought it was very strange, but the physical therapist said that I needed to basically relearn how to walk. My motions were very jagged, but every test that they did said that I was fine neurologically. They would always have a team of doctors come in. They always told me that I was fine, and they said, "We think that you have conversion disorder." And I was like, "What's that?" So then they had this other doctor come in and he's like, "No, it's not conversion disorder. Freud made that up. That's just where your brain thinks you're sick, but you're not. But it's just an all made up thing. You actually have functional neurological disorder, which is very real. And what you're going through is very real. But your brain's just not communicating with your body properly." I'm like, gee, I wonder what could have caused that. They did do the aluminum blood draw. When I pulled my full medical records, I saw that a doctor had tried to cancel the aluminum blood draw before I was actually discharged. Praise the Lord, it had already completed. They had already sent it off because it had to go to an external lab. So I got my aluminum blood results back. I do have paperwork for all of the things that they told me and all of the gaslighting. I submitted an amendment to the hospital asking them to amend all of my records to show the truth after I got my results back, and only 3 of the 7 doctors actually amended my records. Of course, the workplace doctor did not. I never got workman's comp for any of my things, and I was fired from the job. And they had actually discharged my workers' comp case on the day they got these results back from the doctors. I don't know if you want to look at this, but
well, tell us what it says.
So this was the IgG, IgE, all of the comprehensive metabolic panel for allergens. And so I don't have allergies to any of those things. However, what I thought was very interesting was my histamine plasma level. It says your range should be 0 to 8. Mine was a 15. So when I started studying, after all of this, I started studying herbs because alternative medicine actually helped me heal. And in the microbiology textbook that I read, when you have a delayed hypersensitivity reaction to a toxin, your histamine levels are raised. And it takes hours, sometimes days, for that reaction to happen. And I also learned that your immune system, your children inherit your immune system. So my children could potentially have this type of a reaction in the future because they got their immunity from me. So anyway, I think it's really ridiculous that they completely discharged my case and they don't have any of that on record as being caused from the vaccination. But my aluminum was a 12. I learned that the terminal half-life for aluminum is 7 to 10 days. They drew my blood on day 11. After the terminal half-life, your aluminum serum level, you should only have 1% or less of the aluminum still remaining in your blood serum. Mine was a 12. 25 is considered toxic. And if 12 is less than 1% of what was still floating through my blood, that means that I was injected with over 1,200 micrograms of aluminum potentially. I also learned about the Boostrix vaccination, and I have another keep note on my phone for the math. And I did this math, and I'm not a nurse, but I did message my friend who's a nurse, and I asked her, is this correct? And she said it was. So my math was, according to the Boostrix package insert, It says they have 0.5 milliliters of aluminum. The vaccine is 0.5 milliliters of fluid, which if you convert that to liters, it's 0.0005 liters. According to how much aluminum they say is in this vaccine, they say it's 0.39 milligrams, because they want it to sound small because it's a decimal. 0.39, that's nothing. But that transfers to 390 micrograms. And as I've already said, there's a document from the FDA that says 25 is toxic when you're considering putting food into a feeding tube for a baby or for a child. 25 is toxic, so 390 micrograms is what's actually in the Boostrix vaccine. The FDA document, the 25 micrograms is per 1 liter. That's the max you can have. It would take 500 of these vaccination vials to make 1 liter. So 0.39 milligrams times 500 would be 195 milligrams of aluminum by assay in the vaccine. 195 milligrams translates to 195,000 micrograms per liter of Boostrix. So 195,000 micrograms of aluminum when 25 is considered toxic. I thought that was mind-blowing, and definitely will not get any further vaccinations.
And then the last vaccine you had?
Yes, and my children have not had a vaccine since we moved to Guatemala. They were 7 and 10, so they will definitely not get any further. But they denied my claim. Based upon the medical records received, it does not appear that the authorized treating physicians assigned under the Alabama Workers' Compensation Act have related any of your complaints to the vaccination you received. And then I appealed it months later, and they still denied it, even after 3 of the 7 doctors changed my medical records. But now, permanently on my UAB records, they say that I'm allergic to Tdap vaccine, even though the vaccine technically didn't cause anything according to workers' comp or anyone else that you ask. And so I went through every legal avenue. I reported to VAERS. I did all the things you're supposed to do, and I quit when I finally talked to an attorney in Virginia. It was my 3rd attorney to talk to, and I told him the rock and the hard place I was between, because I needed to continue to get medical testing and have an official diagnosis that they could link back, which the last time I went to a neurologist, they were trying to say I had multiple sclerosis or MS. Is that what that is? So they were trying to relate it to that, and they wanted to do further neurological testing, including MRIs. And I said, if I've got aluminum in my brain, you're not putting a high-powered magnet in my brain. I'm just not doing this test. And when I was explaining all of this to the attorney, I told him everything points back to the aluminum, and I have sufficient evidence to show that. And he said the court system will not fall on an aluminum vaccine injury, because if they do, they would have so many cases that they would have to go back on, and they don't have a backup plan. They don't have a secondary line or a way to make vaccinations. And so literally, if you want any kind of change within the court system, you have to literally have an act of Congress to change it. So I quit.
What are your symptoms like today? Do you still have symptoms?
No, thankfully. Well, last summer was the last time I had anything, and I had where my left side completely gave out from under me, my left leg, just getting up to go to the bathroom. But I work for a chiropractor who practices functional neurology, Dr. Channing King in Trussville, Alabama. He's phenomenal. And so he has what's called FCT therapy, and it's a form of homeopathy, essentially. He says it's causative homeopathy. And so it's basically cell frequencies. So it took acupuncture and Dr. Blaylock's detox. That saved my life. I had a fellow missionary in Guatemala who referred me to that protocol, and I was taking those things when the hospital was literally just admitting me and watching me. And so I was taking 18 vitamins and supplements along with drinking my shakes, and that's what saved my life. I fully believe it.
Remember to the viewers watching that Children's Health Defence does not give out medical advice.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay. It's what happened to you. That's
Yeah.
great. We just have to be super careful. Is there anything else you want to tell the people?
Do your own research. Don't ever feel pressured. Don't ever feel like this is what everyone else does. I have to do it so my kids can go to school. I have to do it. I mean, it's a gateway. It's always a gateway to make you feel like you have to do something, but you don't have to do anything. That's a logical fallacy. You always have more than one option. And do your research, learn your body, and know your body, because no doctor will ever treat it like that. Every doctor is already biased to whatever pharmaceuticals, whatever they have in their artillery. And what I've learned is that alternative medicine is basically playing offense, and Western medicine as we know it is playing defense. You wait till your symptoms are so bad you have nothing else to do, and you have to fight with the strongest drugs possible to feel like you have to survive. But if you just live a healthy life and you are proactive instead of reactive, you won't have the symptoms at all to begin with. So you won't end up with a diagnosis, because the diagnosis is only telling you what your symptoms have.
Thank you.